Hello, everyone. This is the 306th episode of Soccer Nostalgia Talk Podcast. As always, this is Sean from Los Angeles and a Soccer Nostalgia blog. For this episode, I welcome back French author Mr. Mario Morisi. This is the third part of our interview regarding his book. Again, Roberto Baggio, vingt ans, the folie italienne and mondiale, about the career of Roberto Baggio. The first part covered his origins to the 1990 World Cup. The second part covered the post 1990 until the 1994 World Cup. Now, this third part will cover the period from post 1994 World Cup to retirement at Brescia in 2004. Again, this is the first biography of Roberto Baggio in French, and Mr. Morizzi has authored many books in French and Italian. Well, welcome back, Mario.
Happy to be with you, but for me, talking in English that long is an ordeal, but I try my best.
Thank you. So, last time we left off at the end of the 1994 World Cup and that penalty kick miss. So, after that, Roberto Baggio goes to his annual hunting trip to Argentina. And that's where we pick up.
That was really dramatic because he missed this famous penalty kick, making his nation lose the World Cup. Not really, because two other of his mates missed the penalty kick, but he was alone, sort of run the pampa, chasing with the people from there, gauchos and strange people, and disappeared from the world, in fact. But when he comes back, everybody has changed. I mean, the famous triad Bettega, Giraudo, Moggi, which was called Lucky Luciano, sort of mafioso, strange man condemned to have sort of put the girlies in the bed of the referees during the competitions. Well, the three of them, the La Triade, Trimurti, sort of changed everything in the Juve. When Baggio left, he was the Ballon d'Or. He was the best in the world. He missed the penalty kick, but he was a hero. But when he comes back, there is a problem to solve. That's the contract. At the time, the Bosman rules would come in December from the European Union, telling that any worker can circulate freely on the European territory. It means that the footballers, that the contracts before changed completely. And when Baggio comes back, he's under the contract signed up with Boniperti 2 or 3 years before, which didn't take in count the right of images, the right of copyright, the right of the image of advertising, and the brand Baggio, as Forbes said, the magazine's Forbes of the billionaires, was the first footballer to becoming one of the rich men in the world. Then it was a fight, a struggle between him, the former contract, and the Triad and Agnelli Umberto, the brother of Gianni Agnelli, to give him a new contract. But everybody was a bit precary. There was nothing that taking count of the new conditions. It means that Baggio was in the middle of the river. He wanted to remain in Juve, but everything that changed at the point that Lippi, who took the place of Trapattoni, who disappeared and went to Bayern Munich. Then another club would have had 45 billions of lira to get him, but it was not reasonable because he was always injured because he missed the penalty kick. So there was a fight, a terrible fight about the price, about the conditions. And at the time, Baggio had no agent because Caliendo was given the boot after the story of Fiorentina, Juve, and the riots in Florence. And then he started to get his own business with a friend of his, member of the Soccer called Vittorio Petrone, who became his agent and sort of sideman. There was a fight about the price, but at the same time, the poor Baggio saw that all the team had changed. His alter ego, Dino Baggio, was fantastic during the World Cup, was sent to Parma. And most of the players, Andreas Müller, came back to Borussia Dortmund. And the new team was footballers like Deschamps, like Yarni, like people playing in the
Paulo
midfield.
Sousa, the
But yeah,
Portuguese.
also, yeah, sort of very busy physical players. Conte, we know him very
Ciro
well.
Ferrara, first season at
Yes.
Juventus.
And especially in the attack, Viali coming back to health because he had so many injuries, but he was fit again. And Ravanelli coming from nowhere, scoring goals. So Baggio was injured, fragilized by his penalty kick missed in Pasadena, costing a lot with a new agent. And there was the burst and the appearance of Del Piero, who was a fantastic player that Baggio loved very much. There was no fight between them, but he was the replacement very cheaper. So the condition were playing against Baggio at the moment of signing for the season 94-95. And then catastrophe, an injury, the knee, always the knee, and he remains 96 days without playing. And the team, the new team of Lippi Triad of Juve is winning, working well without him. At the end of the season, he comes back and being extraordinary, scoring incredible goals, reaching the final of the UEFA Cup against Parma. They would lose. But at this time, he will not be selected for the Italian teams next year for the Euro. And his story sort of gets down.
So this post 1994 for World Cup time is difficult for Baggio and is the reference point of his decline at that point. So as you mentioned, the Fiat and Juventus owners Gianni and Umberto Agnelli had decided for a new change in the executive leadership to be more in tune with the modern era. So Boniperti was dismissed for a second time and retired. And like you said, there's a new triumvirate of a former star Roberto Bettega, Antonio Girodo, and like you said, Luciano Moggi. So, and a new manager arrives, Marcello Lippi, and he's playing a 4-3-3 system. Baggio, like you said, I think he missed half the season, virtually half the season. I think he only played 17 matches during that season. And like you said, in his absence, Alessandro Del Piero and Ravanelli took the opportunity and were shining along with Gianluca Vialli, who had been hampered in the previous couple of seasons with injuries, but he was fit and at his best that season. And Juventus stormed towards the Scudetto, and the management took advantage of Baggio's weaker position. They wanted to cut costs. So they forced him either to take a reduced salary or leave. I think knowing full well that he probably would leave. But despite coming back towards the end of the season and winning the Scudetto, Baggio eventually left for Berlusconi's AC Milan, who were willing to pay him that type of salary.
I have something to. There were some nasty things made against Baggio. Incredible, because the triumvirate you are talking about, there was called Trimurti or Triad, yeah, sort of mafia words. One day, Baggio arrives earlier and he sees Moggi surrounded by the ultra and the Drugis were sort of incredible hysterics and supporters saying that Baggio wanted more and more money. So there were coys during the matches against him, his mother, his way, a mercenary, a traitor. So there was a campaign in the asking, pretending he wanted more money. So there were incredible conditions, and Baggio was fighting in the middle of this alone, without an agent, with his friends who would become his agent, but not at the time. So that was an unfair fight. And then there is what you say. There was the joint venture between Juve and Milan. He was at the middle, at the center of it when he was at Florence, because Berlusconi had signed him before Juve, most secretly. And there were an arrangement between Berlusconi and Agnelli because they wanted to fight and unite their efforts against Real Madrid, Manchester, all the great worldwide rivals. So at this time, Baggio again was in the middle of tractations because Betega became sort of professional of football, not playing but being a dirigent. In the middle of Berlusconi's societies, he learned at Berlusconi's to making business. So they decided more or less to get rid of him with a sort of an arrangement taking consideration not only football but money, financial moves, and so Baggio was on hostage of all that. And before coming to Milan AC, who was no more the Kings because they lost their first Serie A in 95 to the benefit of Juve. At this time, Inter wanted Baggio. Baggio's family was Inter supporters, incredible maniacs for the Nerazzurri. But when Baggio got to know that he was sold without his agreement to Inter, he said, I don't want to be sold like an orange or a car. And he said no, and so decided to get to Berlusconi's Galliani's Milan AC for a price was half the price provided, but disobeying more or less and becoming more a subject of conflict and polemics in Italy, just like the Capulet and Montaigu, like in the past in the Renaissance Italienne.
At Berlusconi's AC Milan for the 1995-96 season, he's joined by the likes of the Liberian Georges Weah. However, AC Milan manager Fabio Capello does not have full confidence in him, and he's often substituted or playing out on the left. He's perceived to be not physically fit to last 90 minutes. And despite winning the Scudetto in his first season, it's not a happy time. And by now, he has also lost his place with the Azzurri, and Gianfranco Zola is Arrigo Sacchi's choice for the position when it comes to the 1996 Euros. The 1996-97 season is even unhappier as the once mighty AC Milan struggle and would eventually finish in mid-table. They start the season with the Uruguayan Oscar Washington Tabarez on the bench, but after poor results, Arrigo Sacchi is reappointed as AC Milan manager, and Baggio's time is even more limited under Sacchi. And as Baggio put it, under Sacchi, he was like a quote Ferrari being driven by a traffic warden, unquote. So as we come to the summer of 1997, it was clear that his future lay elsewhere if he had any ambitions to make the national team in time for the 1998 World Cup. Now, aged 30 and after so many injuries, was he being seen as yesterday's man by the calcio hierarchy?
Well, you're right to sort of sum up the story. The 2 years Baggio plays for Rossoneri for Milan AC weren't that bad. He wasn't that injured because I've got the numbers here 23 days of stop, only one injury, and 4 matches not played. He scored wonderful goals. The tifosi of Milan were used to watch Van Basten, Gullit, and all the stars find him extraordinary, were sort of empathizing with him because when he was entering, he was glorious. And don't remember that the staff, the squad of Milan this year, there was Dejan Savicevic, called a genius, George Weah, an incredible Marco Simone, who couldn't play a match because there was no place for him, and he was scoring every time. So Capello was realistic. He saw that Baggio was not really fit with his back, with his injuries, and so he sort of made him play at his advantages, in fact, because he played most of the year. That was not the trouble. Is the sort of dramatic thing for Baggio that when he was playing for Juve, Milan was unbeatable, and now that he changed team, he goes to and Juve becomes unbeatable and Milan a loser. So there was a sort of tricky play with the fate against him. But he was named Cuore di Milano by the supporters, the Ultra Milan AC. That was not that bad. But the second year, what I call in my book the annus horribilis, that was forced four coaches in the year, and the comeback of Saki, which with the war about Norway and Baggio being called off during the competition in USA. Afterwards, playing pressing, and Baggio said openly that you couldn't play pressing with 95 Fahrenheit of warmth, and sort of there was something that didn't function. When he comes back, Baggio couldn't play anymore. And then he loses the Euro, where it was an incredible fight against Sacchi and Baggio. And once again, Baggio was at the same time the hero and the black sheep. Then I wanted to precise this because decline, that was a decline, but that was a glorious decline with some moment of incredible grace who sort of continued the legend of the Divine Codino, who was called now Codino or Baggio or Baggino, a small Baggio. There is something very near to the lovers of football, even though he had many troubles with his knee and with his coaches.
He had the chance to join Parma now under Carlo Ancelotti. However, Ancelotti decided against this as he had built a team and did not want to disrupt his system. And this was a decision that he publicly regretted later. So, this was further indication that perhaps he was no longer the sought after phenomenon of old. In a surprising move, he joined the unfashionable side of Bologna, managed by Renzo Olivieri. Baggio even cut his trademark ponytail in this new challenge. It was a gamble as Baggio needed a good season to make the 1998 World Cup. Olivieri did not always start him, and this led to some tension, especially with the fans. But Baggio was more impressive in the second half of the season and started scoring so many goals. I think in the end, he scored like 22 goals, and the public demanded his presence for the World Cup. And in the end, he earned his way as Cesare Maldini included him in the end.
We'll come back to the trade from Milan to missed with Parma and succeeded in Bologna because it's very interesting. Once again, he was in the middle of a tractation full of money and passion. It means that Tansi, the chairman of Parma, at the time a great team, won 3 European Cups. They had beaten Juve in the UEFA Cup final. They had Crespo, they had an incredible team, and they had a lot of money which lead them to
Or the
bankruptcy.
Parmalat money, yeah.
Well, and that was that fight between Angeli, Berlusconi, joint ventures, money, images, and so. And Milan AC was very fair with Baggio. Capello, when he came back, said he wouldn't sort of count on Baggio, and he said him. So they sort of arrange a way out, not asking lots of money and respecting the figure of Baggio, and especially to become popular and not becoming the sort of enemy of the national hero. They were signing in an hotel at Parma. Everybody was the president, the chairman Tanzi was very proud of saying everywhere we've got Baggio because Juve it was impossible for Baggio. Inter he refused him. Milan it was over. So Parma was the best solution. But I don't know why. First, Ancelotti said he sort of get rid of Zola as a number 10 because he was playing a 4-4-2 and he had the attack was working well, and it was not good for him to have another star in the attack. And at the same time, when he saw there was a sort of problem about his contracts, Baggio left Parma with his car and turned back to Vicenza to his family and said, I don't want to be used. I want to play. I want to play the World Cup in France. I want to be active. I want to show that I am fit and I am still Roberto Baggio. And so Bologna, the enemy of Parma in Emilia Romagna, jumped on the occasion and sought to sign the president Gazzoni, famous financial entrepreneur, buys him without asking his coach Olivieri. And Olivieri was a communist, a sincere communist, and he helped Bologna, who was a great club in the 50s, to get back to first division from Serie C to Serie B, and with a team of, I would say, hard workers, solidary people, what he was calling his cooperative. And then there is suddenly, with his team, with his squad, with his friend footballers, they were a gang. Someone arrives from nowhere, Baggio, and that's a disaster for the solidity for the group. Olivieri said with Baggio they would get back to second division, and it started very badly between the two. Well, it gets better. Baggio plays collectively. There are Anderson, who are the great center forwards from Sweden. There was Kolivanov, very good number 10 from Russia. There was Marokin, an ex-Juve. They had a very good team. They were qualified to the European Cup, UEFA Cup the year before. But it happens that Bologna plays against Juve from the Trimurti, from the gangsters, who sort of exfiltrated Baggio 2 years before. And at that time, before the game, Olivieri said to Baggio and Kolivanov that they wouldn't play. For 2 weeks, the papers, the television, medias sort of roaring about Baggio against la vieille dame, la vecchia signora, revenge, the return of the Baggio against Agnelli. There were titles, and suddenly, the night before, Olivieri, you won't play, you will stay on the bench. Baggio get mad, sort of jumpy in his car, and comes back in Vicenza. And the president Gazzoni is called to the phone. Everybody is trying to interfere to help. But Baggio said, I was offered by Inter Milan and Chairman Moratti to get in January to Inter while playing Ronaldo, Djokovic, and so on. And finally, Baggio decided to stay in Bologna because he said, he declared that 10,000 Bolognese have sort of make the reservation for the season, and he didn't want to let them down in the middle of the season. So he comes back, it gets better, and after this sort of shock and very cool relation with Olivieri, Baggio is sort of is becoming again a star. 22 goals, assists, incredible thing, and all Italy is sort of supporting him so that Maldini, the coach of the Italian team, would take him to France in 98. And that's a very popular, that's a reality show. Each match, each day of competition, all Italy is supporting and claiming, and Baggio invents this famous wave that everybody uses now with his ear saying call my name, I will be to France. So once again, it makes you think of Ulysses, which was abandoned in Calypso and Circe and so on, and fight against Poseidon and fight against all the kings and forces of the earth, and finally gets back and becomes again the greatest.
In the 1998 World Cup, Baggio is seen as a backup to Del Piero, but the latter's injury allowed Baggio to start in the first two matches. There's a redemption of scoring against Chile with a penalty kick.
The last kick of Baggio was making lose his team in front of 2 billion humans. And there, Italy is losing to Chile his first match of the French competition. And everybody is looking who is going to take the penalty. He created himself, aiming to the hand of a poor Chile defender who sort of was trapped. And when you see his face when he's coming to the ball and putting it on in front, and you see that he takes the ball, Maldini shouts Baggio, and he takes the ball. Then at the time, he used to say to the journalists and the people, if I would have missed again, I would have come back with Salas and Zamorano in Chile forever. But he had the courage to take the penalty and score. But when you watch his face, he is blank. He is really not a drop of blood in his face. So once again, the legend, the bravery of the hero against everything. And that's the reason why I insisted, because you talked about decline. In fact, he's not the best of the world, but for 10, 20 moments, 20 seconds during the season, he just reappears like a flashing star.
After starting in the first two matches, Baggio is on the bench as a fit again. Del Piero is the starter. Baggio will come on as a substitute in the next three matches. He will score once against Austria, but Italy is eliminated by France in the quarterfinals after a penalty kick shootout in a match that Baggio has a very good opportunity with a volley that missed.
He enters it after 1 hour of playing, and he changes the match. Thuram, Blanc, and the others said alone his only presence make us in embarrass much more than all the other strikers of the competition. He started to get the ball back, to move between the lines, and he provoked one, two, three occasions with his crosses towards Vieri and the other forwards. And as you say, during the extra time, there is an occasion where he was given the ball through the lines on the right side of the pitch, and he sort of, without playing the ball, he touched it with the ankle, the outside of the feet, and the ball entered the net for 20 centimeters. And all the breadth of the Stade de France, because Italy-France is a very special match. 30% of the French have Italian origins, and we are competing about art, about style, about mode, about nearly everything. And the family were mixed up in Grenoble, in Marseille, and the people are either from France or from Italy. And then the art of everyone sort of stopped breaking, and the ball that doesn't enter. But here, once again, for a few centimeters, the hero becomes the loser. And my interpretation is that was a fortune for Baggio for posterity. It means if he scores against Brazil, Italy lose the same because Bebeto was shooting after him. And him, sort of, the destiny of the World Cup would have changed. And what I used to say in my interview that maybe nobody remember, but a Danish businessman was on the Champs-Élysées with his family, and he was killed by a car during the celebration of France's first star. And if the ball gets in, all the destiny is changing because the same people are not at the same, and our destiny, yours, Shahani, and mine. So if I am exaggerating about that, is saying that the geste, the legend of Baggio has something to do with paranormal and merveilleux, le merveilleux.
Well, it certainly is a merveilleux career. Baggio also he became the first Italian to score in 3 World Cups during this 1998 World Cup. So with the impressive season with Bologna and now with the national team, this is seen as another resurrection for Baggio.
Phoenix,
Yeah.
Phoenix.
And this resurrection, again, it paves the way for Baggio's return to prominence and to join longtime admirer Massimo Moratti's Inter, who are keen to team him up with Ronaldo. So at this point, he has now played for the big three in his career: Juventus, AC Milan, and now Inter. So in his first season, 1998-99 season, it's disappointing as the team go through 4 managers and struggled. And Baggio's main highlight included his 2 goals against Real Madrid in the Champions League. But the following season, 1999-2000, another one of his former managers, Marcello Lippi, is appointed.
The
And
man of the triad.
yes. And again, he doesn't see him as first choice, and he's often at odds. And Baggio would even accuse him of asking him to be his spy in the dressing room with the other players. So he informed Moratti that if Lippi stayed, he would have to leave. And his main highlight in the second season is his important role in the Champions League playoff win over Parma at the end of the season. Despite pleas from Moratti, Baggio decided enough was enough and would leave. Is his Inter spell an opportunity lost as none of the managers seem to be sympathetic to him?
No, I think we have to get back to the spirit with the Nerazzurri. Inter was the team of the family, the Baggio family. They were fans since the time of Elenio Herrera and so on. And at the end, Baggio is called by Inter. There is a sort of a love story about between the ultra of Inter and him. Simone is the coach. At the time, you've got Ronaldo in the team. At the time, they won against Lazio 3-0 in Paris, the UEFA Cup the year before. They were, you remember that they called him when there were problems at Bologna to make him play in January and refused not to deceive the Bologna supporters. But then he arrives in a triumph, and the people are hallucinating. A tandem Ronaldo Baggio, two of the best player ever. Everybody's become mad about this duel. And but destiny, just like in the bleeding Western film, and luck, the knee of Ronaldo burst out, and Baggio is always injured. So at the end of the season, they would have played only 10 matches. And when they play together, I recommend the people who are listening to us to get to YouTube and see the Roma Inter 5
Oh,
to
that
4.
5-4 match, right? That 5.
Just watch him from the beginning to the end, and well, what you see is incredible. If Baggio and Ronaldo would have been injured, the destiny of world football would have probably changed. Then there is this sort of hero, just like in a film. Baggio is taking a part on the bench. He's injured. He is a very filthy, cunning character. It is not very appropriate to the new way of playing for 4-4-2 and positions and where to play him and so on. But he appears. That's Marilyn Monroe. That's to God. The people are just crawling in a second. So with the 4 coaches with a disastrous year, the first year in Inter, the second one against Lippi, one of his enemies, he just appears and scores phenomenal goals from the bench. It's just a deus ex machina. All the theories and organizations and plans of Lippi sort of grown, and every time he's got back his forward, is the people who play instead of Baggio, he get back to the bench. He is forced to make him enter, and he scores 7 times in 7 matches. It seems to have been written by a Hollywood script, and that's part of the legend. So you said decline, but what a decline!
At the millennium, it appears that age has once again caught up with Baggio. For some time, Regina are in line to sign him until Brescia president Gino Corioni and veteran manager Carlo Mazzone stepped up. If Bologna was Baggio's second act, the even more unfashionable Brescia for 2000-2001 season would be his third act for the final phase of his career. Finally, Mazzone was the manager he was looking for who understood him. Baggio would shine in a team that included a young Andrea Pirlo, Luca Toni, Dario Ubner, and Bonera, among others. There is the memory of that iconic goal against Juventus from Pirlo's long pass from the middle of the field.
A masterpiece.
And he helped Brescia, who are usually just struggling to maintain in the Serie A. He helped them maintain their place in the Serie A. Was Baggio back to his best, happier in a friendlier environment?
Yes, you could say that. You can say that. But what you have to say that after all injuries, the change of clubs, and he sort of started to think to his daughter Valentina, to his wife Andreina, to Mattia, first saying that he wouldn't, because he was asked by Ferguson at Man United, by Barcelona, by Real Madrid, by Anderlecht, instead of his age, older with age, he could have played for very famous clubs for the Champions League. But he says, I want to stay not far from Vicenza and my family. And so when Mazzone just read on the newspapers that he could have come to Regina in the south of Italy, he gave him a ring. Mazzone, the man who discovered Totti, who is a Giroud, incredible characters of Italian football, and who is not a jealous man. He's not like Lippi, like Secchi, ambitious, with agents, with a sort of desire to change the world. Mazzoni is a very down to earth character, and he admires Baggio for all the things because he's a man of football. So he decides to manage to give him a place, a role, a mission among his young partners, preserving of too many matches. And they invent with Guardiola, who comes to who sort of will come to Brescia for Baggio. He said it several times. They had invented a way to make him play. He was in the circle, in the middle of the pitch, and every time an action was finished, he was coming back there. And all his partners used to look in the middle of the field and give him the ball so he hadn't to run very much. But when he had the balls, he scored 44 goals in 4 seasons and was a golden era of Brescia with incredible performance, especially this goal you were mentioned was for me, but I'm always thinking of William of Ockham, who sort of invented the physician principles that nature is trying to make the shorter trajectory, the shorter line from one point to another. And this goal, Pirlo, 50 yards, the ball, and at the same time, the control, the dribble, as something essential, something that, for me, that's the best, most incredible goals ever.
For the 2001 and 2002 season, Baggio at Brescia set himself a challenge to make the 2002 World Cup squad, with Italy now managed by Giovanni Trapattoni. Following an injury in January, he races against the clock to stake a claim. In the last four matches of the season, he scored three goals and helped Brescia and save them from relegation. However, he was controversially not called up for the World Cup as Trapattoni told him that he was not capable of playing at the highest level. Do you feel that the national team senators were behind this decision?
Well, that's very complex. It's a pluridimensional. My book is to be bought because there are some sort of explanation of these very sort of dark periods. You never know who was right, who was lying or not. Italy had an incredible squad. There is Totti, Del Piero, Montella couldn't play. I mean, they had seven great attackers. They were 4 or 5 years younger than Baggio. Baggio was a problem for everyone, even if it was not his fault. He was sort of changing the lines, making people crazy or angry. There was a sort of imbalance when he was here. Then Trapattoni would have said personally to Baggio that he thought he was fit and was scoring 15 goals. He would go to Korea and Japan, a place where he's loved, he's admired because he's a Buddhist. He would have changed maybe the behavior of the referee against Korea. He would have changed the sort of atmosphere of the peoples admiring him, even being Asiatics. So an incredible team, a squad, and I think this generation wanted to be without him. They wouldn't say it, but because he was a glory, he is admired. But at the same time, he wasn't very welcome, I think. But at the same time, there is a very dark thing about religion. Giovanni Trapattoni is a believer, hard believer. He is said to be part of the Opus Dei, which is the sort of laic weapon of the Catholic Church. His sister is a nun, which is very engaged with Opus Dei and so on. Then everybody remembers L'Acquasanta. He was sort of during the matches in Korea. He was sort of Acquasanta, holy water. He was sort of using it during the matches. Then Baggio doesn't play for 165 days, 29 matches without playing. He started well, 8 goals in 9 matches, but normally he couldn't be fit to get to. But he went to isokinetic, which is a very avant-garde way of treat the injuries and problems of this type. And they use a very revolutionary practice and operate them from the crociati. And 76 days after being operated, he entered the pitch against Fiorentina, always a sort of coincidence, magic correspondences. It's a scored 2 goals, score against Bologna, score everywhere, and finally he's fit, saved Brescia, and said, Trap, you promised me I would go if I was fit and scoring, and now well, I imagine the dilemma for Trapattoni was one of the greatest mister ever, but he had given his words. He had a young generation of champions who were among the favorites of the competition. He may make trouble, sort of inviting Baggio to join them, and at the same time, Baggio is a model for millions and millions and millions of youngsters in the world, especially in Japan, in Cambodia, in Laos, and in Korea. And the fact that he may change the competition, one of his tricks of magical, would sort of make a hero and sometimes make win Buddha against Christ. I am exaggerating, but that's the pace we have to sort of look for it. And I am sort of saying that and writing that in my book.
So we come to his final two seasons as a footballer. For the 2002-2003 season, Baggio, still at Brescia, set himself three challenges. Maintain Brescia in the Serie A, score 200 goals in the Serie A and score 300 total goals in his career. In the end, he managed the first and the third during the season, which was the last with Mazzone. Baggio's final season as a professional was to be the 2003-2004 season with a new manager, Gianni De Biasi. He fulfills his last challenge of scoring 200 goals in the Serie A. He even played a last match for the Azzurri as part of his farewell. I believe against Spain. Yeah, against Spain, I believe. He bowed out on May 15th, 2004 against AC Milan, and in the end, he had managed to leave at the top after a positive spell. Was it a fitting end to a glittering career?
If I may use a flashback, I would come back to 2002. He could have lived because Mazzone in 2002 until 2003 said he was retiring and going back. And Baggio had signed on the contract that whether Mazzone would be chased up from his post of coach, he would have lived himself. So his destiny was linked to the one of Mazzone. He couldn't have been selected for Korea and Japan. Then he was injured. He couldn't walk. My friend Marco Bencivenga sort of helped me to meet all these people entering the dressing room, talking to all the stars. Said that when he saw him the last time, he couldn't lace his boots. He couldn't lean forwards. He was coming to Brescia for 2 days on Wednesday, Thursdays, but he couldn't make any. He was preparing himself with his physical coach. But he remained. He remained for the people, for the love of the people of Brescia for the last season. And as you said, Gianni De Biasi, a young coach, who became the selection man of Albania some years after, had the intelligence of do whatever he liked. So he played only 15 or 18 matches without European Cups. He saved Brescia scoring 12 goals. And for his last season, he was just a sort of a farewell défilé. All Italy wanted to see him just like an apparition because he would have died, he would have disappeared. Nobody would have seen anymore any of these magie. And there was something very religious. And when you observe, when you study the way he was playing, he was relaxed. He was sort of flying in slow motion in the middle of the field, inventing goals more superb than one than the other. That was incredible, a real year of magic, of farewell. And I had the fortune, I was lucky to be for his last matches at Rigamonti against Lazio to see him for the last match would be to the Scala of Milan Sunday after. But this Lazio Brescia, 30,000 people because they let anyone enter the stadium without counting. Everybody was told, I said, we'll never see him again. That's the last time, last seconds. First half, he touched the ball 10 times, very deception. Everybody was sad. There was nothing to see, to sort of remember. Lazio was fighting hard with Stankovic, Stam, Simone Inzaghi. They were fighting with Mancini as a coach for getting the last place position in a Champions League qualification. That wasn't friendly. And maybe at the 93rd minutes of the match, an incredible cross is with the back of the heel, blindly watching the stands. He gave the ball to Mauri, goal, an incredible assist with the heel. Everybody sort of stunned. 5 minutes later, he is sort of standing in the middle of four giants, Celesti, two tricks and goal. And he says, farewell, now I can leave. And everybody was sort of crying. The people were embracing an emotion. And what I would say is among all the great stars of football. Never mind the palmarès, the trophies, the perfection, the statistics. He is the footballer who sort of is near to the great stars of rock and roll or cinema. Emotion. He is a man, a creator of emotion and moments.
In the end, Baggio was never really attached to a single club like Maradona was to Napoli or Maldini to AC Milan. Nor was he really a journeyman type of a player who bounced from club to club. It seems like everywhere he went, despite his ups and downs, he was remembered. Did he, in the end, belong to everyone in the culture as he was universally admired, except by some managers here and there? Mhm.
Yes, that's the point. In fact, he is remembered by anyone in Italy and in the world with the Squadra Azzurra, with the jersey of Italy with this incredible blue, which is not blue blau coming from Anglo-Saxon, coming from Orient. You know, Azzurro, lapis lazuli is Persian, is Arabic. There is something mystic, heraldic in Azzurro. And myself, I'm sort of using make some pictures, some paintings. And if you take all the colors, you had white, all the basic colors. If you mix them up, you have white. But here with Bologna, Vicenza, Firenze, Milan, Bologna, and Torino, the mixture is azzurro, is got in the heart of everyone with small touches, but at the end, he is Italy.
Despite being a happy and jovial figure and a practical joker, he did have issues with some of his managers, most notably Sacchi and Lippi and maybe Olivieri. Some managers tried to protect him: Bruno Giorgio, Bersellini, Maifredi, Simoni, or Mazzone. Why was he misunderstood by some of his managers? Was it a case of the managers not getting the best out of him?
For me, there is something more profound. In Cervantes' Don Quixote, there is a part which is neglected. It's about pastoral poems. And in one of them, there is a girl who is that beautiful, who is so splendid that she sort of destroy all the men's and all the girls who sort of are next to him. She's so incredibly beautiful that she commits suicide because she's sort of getting disasters around her and she couldn't stand it anymore. Without getting to that point, just imagine that in your school class, you are 10 years old and there is the future Marilyn Monroe, someone who's sort of irradiating supernatural charm. You know that charm comes from Carmen in Latin, means malediction, enchantment, and so on. So I think he is that beautiful with his special eyes, his Asiatic profile. He is a jester, a joker, a maniac. You know that Schillaci gave him a punch because he used to tap under his newspapers and he broke his teeth. Then he was, I think that the very serious, professional, organized, paranoid coaches were at the time where before Boskov was a great Yugoslavian coach of Mancini Sampdoria. Nobody knows how much he was paid. Nobody he had no agent. And for everyone, Sampdoria, he was the coach, but the stars were Mancini and Vialli. The new generation, with the change of contract to time, Bosman, the coaches were professional, getting lots of money, and they sort of invented incredible strategy, tactics, and we don't talk about football must go out of pharmacy because well, doping was. I would get back to Baggio in Juve. How could he stand that the people next door were sort of needling themselves, as he is one who doesn't support medications? Well, I mean the new strategy to win at all costs. I think incited them to despise, to sort of hate a bit this wonderful boy, this very ambiguous figure because he is very proud, very competition-like, incredibly fighting against the dollars and everyone. And I think he was sort of obscure. It was a problem for their celebrity, their fame.
And he was also critical of former players who now were pundits who criticized the current players on television. Was it partly due to all the criticism that he had received as a player himself?
We have to situate to remain. He said that 1 or 2 years ago. When he stopped playing football, he disappears. He goes in the middle of his garden. He is sort of growing flowers with his wife. But he disappears. You couldn't see on television. You couldn't see on papers. You could see only when there was someone dead or one broadcast special catcher once a year. He disappears. He had nothing to do. In 2010, 6 years after leaving, he is nominated as a vice president of the Italian Federation to recreate, to remodel it of the formation of Italian football. 90 pages are prepared and given to the board. They don't answer him and never, and you see what happened for Italy for the three last World Cup. Then he's sort of away from football, from floodlights, and something happens. I will answer you the question at the end. He had three children. Valentina was born in 90, Mattia in 94, and Leonardo in homage to Leonardo da Vinci, to say the character. Valentina has become his agent 2 years ago, leaving very special Vittorio Petrone out. There is something strange about its disappearance. And Valentina is a professional of social medias, of Instagram, TikTok, and so on. And one night, six gangsters comes to Baggio and menace him, hit him on the front, managed to kill all his family, and goes away. Baggio has said 2 days ago to, I think it's an Arabic broadcast, that he sort of said, I must change something. I can't sort of say out of the world not doing, but I think that his daughter so convinced him to get back to the scene for the World Cup in America. And what is maybe a way to finish our conversation, I was very disappointed about Baggio's apparent submission to Infantino and FIFA because he was used as a plump, old, say 50, 60 years old ex-footballer with all these pictures with his former partners of opponents. But he didn't say a thing. But he was nominated Man of the Peace 2010. He was granted of this prize because he went to Laos, he went to Peru, he went everywhere for the young people, the children who are maltreated. He is a sort of angel. He is considered as a bodhisattva by some Buddhists. Then I thought it was very funny to see him sort of laughing and everywhere on the networks, not saying a thing. And I think that the reason is Valentina is daughter. I've got a daughter the same age, born in 90. Must have convinced him to get back on the scene because of USA 94, USA 26. But there was something awkward, something ambiguous. And if I would have Roberto in front of me, I would have asked, what's the problem? I don't understand exactly your position about sort of the Iran who couldn't stay before and after the matches. This African referee was being given the boot and so on. There's something strange, but maybe we'll have to follow the adventures of Roberto son Roberto to know a bit more about that.
Throughout his careers, he would be a man of many nicknames: William Tell, China, Zico, Il Puto, Robbie Gold. Il Divino Codino, Raphael, Little Buddha, Baggino. So that is itself an indication of being a memorable talent. All these nicknames, of course, Divino Codino is the one he'll be mostly remembered for, but it just shows how revered, how admired he was throughout his career wherever he went with all these nicknames.
My poetic theory, I'm not a theorist, I've sort of have an MA in philosophy, but it was in the next millenary, in the last millenary, long times ago. But my theory is that Baggio, born in Vicenza, which is the town of Palladio, architects were influenced more the urbanistic and way of constructing houses and palaces. The La Maison Blanche, the White House, is according to the principles of Palladio, who was a stone worker who became an architect. Afterwards, he goes and he's sort of resurrected in Florence. Florence, La Renaissance, which is rebirth, which is the Divine Commedia has given Divine Codino. He's baptized Raffaello Sanzi da Agnelli, which is the famous painter, the pair of Vinci and Michelangelo. He is sort of you can use, as I said before in another conversation between us, Orfeo. He has lost Eurydice, which is his dream of becoming a winner of the World Cup, and he goes to Inferno with incredible adventures. But he sort of sees the triumph, he sees Taffarel and the goal, but at the last time he is ejected from hell and then ejected from his triumph. Afterwards, if you see the Fenice, the Phoenix, is rebirthed several times. And if you see this sort of coincidence, Baggio, the real man, is sort of coinciding, he just match with the culture Greco-Romana, and afterwards with the social media and globalization, Buddhist becoming a Buddhist and sort of fighting against his karma. Then all these sort of nicknames. Raffaello, that's because one of sports, no, GQ, said in 93 that getting to the Caldogno and asking questions to the girls who had the same age as Baggio, he used to make them with a watermelon on the head, and with the foot he used to take the watermelon out, and only one had the courage to remain until the last moment. It was Andreina. And so Will and Tell that because he sort of pursues his future wife in a very mythical way. So I think that that's the reason why he is hors category. He is folie classe. You can't judge him according statistics, goals, qualities, disadvantage, and so on. And that's the reason why I told you as a conclusion that he was a chimera, another allusion to mythology. He is made of several different animals. He is loving nature and talking to pumas in Argentina.
Hmm.
He is imitating the flight of ducks for his free kicks. He is incredibly unbearable with his friends, with his gags and jokes and so on. Absolutely insupportable, but I feel he has the grace. He has an imagination, a traduction of trajectories, ballistic in his eyes, who are unique. Then he is several persons in one, and especially because when you see him, you are impressed by the aura. There is sort of silence around him, but he is very simple, nice. He never said no. So he is an enigma. He is a puzzle.
And to add to that, he seems to have been happiest at places like Fiorentina, Bologna, and Brescia, where he had a freer role. Though in terms of achievement, he was most successful at Juventus, winning the Scudetto, the UEFA Cup, and the Ballon d'Or. Yet He's not regarded historically as a symbol of Juventus in a manner of, let's say, a Platini or a Del Piero might be. So there are paradoxes regarding Baggio, and that all adds to his mystery.
Yes, you're right, but at the same time, Karl Marx and Hegel, are they considered as great Germans? Jesus Christ, is he considered as someone born in the... all the great characters, they sort of are property of mankind. Is sort of, for me, out of this competition. I mean, Totti, he has always played for Roma, and Del Piero for Juve. There is a sort of sedentary admiration about faith and fidelity against the mercenaries. But at the same time, all the great thinkers, all the great artists of the world have made their humanity crossing the borders, going to Italy, to Orient, to Jerusalem, to Morocco. And for me, is much more than someone to put in a category, someone for me. Is universal. That's the reason why.
In closing, in your book, you have a quote from Oriega of Tuttosport. He stated that the quote, two phrases come up to define him. First, Baggio must not be understood, he needs to be loved. Second, Baggio is poetry, and we do not try to understand the poetry, we try to appreciate it. Does that more or less define what many see in him?
As far as I must betray my theory about being several things at the same time, yes. For instance, I don't know if you have some memories of your school days, but the teachers sometimes they tried their best, but they are sort of making you despise Shakespeare, Goethe, explaining words by words what the poet would have had in his mind and what he wanted to say, and so on. And sometimes Orega is right. And Baggio has a great lie. He stopped playing 30, 20, 22 years ago, but we got YouTube. And now I can notice from the reaction about my book, the age of the people who are liking or talking or responding to my messages, the young generation who are unable to read a book in his whole, who are unable to watch a match in his whole, were always sort of zapping and clicking and so on and liking. In fact, they are discovering the masterpieces of Baggio, who are hundreds. I recommend all the people who sort of would have forgotten Baggio, go to YouTube or another Instagram or whatever, and you click, you sort of look for Baggio's skills or Baggio's goals or Baggio. That's incredible, just pure magic and an elegance. And I repeat myself, but in Tauromachi, in the art of killing poor bulls in Spain, there is a very nice expression when a toro is very good, is very classy, he suspends the time. You've got a sort of way of slow motion, someone. And Baggio is sort of accompanied with a magical atmosphere, a way of moving just like a very, very beautiful woman or man. There is something special about him who is sort of maintained, conserved by the social medias and by my book, because I'm not talking about it, but I would make my promotion. First things, if some English speaking editor would be interested, there would not be many problems to make it translate in English. And the second thing is that's not only the story of a very special man. That's the passage between the 20th and the 21st centuries, with all the changes. And that's a book of history at the same time as a novel, a saga, or a monument written by a cretin called Morisi, who would have been a good footballer but couldn't succeed in.
Well, it's definitely worth a read for sure. So, with that, I would like to thank you for your participation in these three interviews regarding your book.
You made me suffer. Really, I can tell you. That was an ordeal.
Well, there's so much to cover. So, yeah, that unfortunately, one interview would not be enough for such a rich career.
I try to thank you for all you're doing for history of the sport. I'm following you about Russian, about Scotland. It's a great thing, and many thanks for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So, just to remind everyone that all our respective contact information and the link to Mr. Morris's book, again, Roberto Baggio, vingt ans de folie, Italian and mondiale, is listed on the blog and podcast uploads. So, Mario, thank you once again and hope to continue these discussions on football history.
I tried to find another hero, and at 30 years, I would give you a call.
Thank you. I'll be waiting. Thank you.
Ciao, thank you, grazie, grazie mille, merci.
Thank you.